Right now, without thinking about it, you just took a breath. You do it about 20,000 times a day. You have done it every single day of your life. And yet, the way most people breathe, the way you almost certainly breathe, is measurably physiologically wrong. Not a little wrong. Fundamentally wrong. In ways that are making you anxious, tired, sick, and cognitively slower than you should be. How did something so automatic go so badly off track? The answer reaches back millions of years, cuts through the architecture of your skull, and lands in a conclusion that most doctors still do not talk about. Your body was built to breathe in a very specific way. Somewhere along the line, the modern world quietly broke it, and almost nobody noticed. Start with the basics. Air enters your body through two possible routes, the nose and the mouth. For most of human history, there was no debate about which one to use. Your nose was the entry point, full stop. It was the only serious option, and the reason comes down to what the nose actually does because it is far more than a hole in your face. The inside of your nose is lined with a structure called the nasal mucosa, a warm, moist surface covered in microscopic hairs called cilia. As air passes through, those cilia trap particles. Bacteria, pollen, dust, debris, they filter it all before it reaches your lungs. The nose also warms incoming air to roughly body temperature. It adds moisture, it regulates pressure. It is in effect a filtration and conditioning system that your lungs depend on. But none of that is the most important thing the nose does. Deep inside your sinus cavities, your nose produces something called nitric oxide. It is a small molecule with an enormous function. When you breathe through your nose, nitric oxide travels down with the air into your lungs. There, it dilates the blood vessels in your lung tissue, opens them up, which allows your blood to absorb oxygen far more efficiently. Nitric oxide also kills pathogens on contact. It is antiviral, antibacterial. It is your body's built-in air purifier and oxygen booster, running silently every time you inhale through your nose. When you breathe through your mouth, you get none of that. Mouth breathing bypasses every single one of those systems. The air arrives cold, dry, unfiltered, and stripped of nitric oxide. Your lungs have to work harder to extract oxygen from it. Your immune system has to compensate for what the nose would have caught. And this is happening 20,000 times a day in the body of almost every modern human alive. Researcher James Nestor spent years investigating this and documented the effects in careful, sometimes alarming detail. In a now famous experiment at Stanford University, Nestor and Dr. Jayakar Nayak surgically blocked the nasal passages of healthy volunteers, forcing them to breathe only through their mouths for 10 days. The results were immediate and striking. Blood pressure rose. Snoring increased dramatically. Sleep apnea appeared in subjects who had never had it before. Cognitive scores dropped. Stress markers spiked. 10 days of mouth breathing in otherwise healthy adults produced measurable physiological damage across the board. Then they removed the plugs and let the subjects breathe through their noses again. Within days, nearly every marker returned to baseline. Your nose is not optional, it is the correct route, and your body knows the difference immediately. So how did so many people end up breathing through their mouths in the first place? Part of the answer is structural. Anthropologist Daniel Lieberman at Harvard has spent decades studying how the human face has changed over the last 10,000 years. What he found is troubling. As humans transitioned from a diet of tough, wild foods that required heavy chewing, raw tubers, fibrous meat, hard seeds, to the soft, processed foods of agricultural civilization, something happened to the jaw. It stopped developing fully. Chewing is not just about eating. It is a mechanical stimulus that drives bone growth in the face. Children who chew hard foods develop wider jaws, broader palates, and larger nasal passages. Children who grow up on soft, processed foods, the modern default, often develop narrower jaws and crowded teeth. The nasal passages narrow too. And when your nasal passages narrow, breathing through your nose becomes harder. Your body defaults to the easier path, the mouth. This is not ancient history. Lieberman and his colleagues have documented the change in skull morphology with precision, comparing pre-agricultural skulls to those of modern humans. The difference is visible. The modern human face is literally smaller in the midsection than it was 10,000 years ago, and the consequences live in your airways. Add to that the modern habit of chronic stress. When your nervous system shifts into its sympathetic state, fight or flight, your breathing pattern changes. It becomes faster, shallower, more likely to involve the mouth. And for many people in the modern world, that low-grade stress state is not a temporary response to a real threat. It is a persistent background condition, a constant low hum of urgency that keeps the breathing pattern dysregulated day after day. This is where the work of physiologist Konstantin Buteyko becomes relevant. Working in Russia during the mid-20th century, Buteyko noticed something that his colleagues initially dismissed as too simple to matter. The way most people breathe is characterized by chronic overbreathing, not deep, slow nasal breathing. Fast, shallow, often mouthed breathing that exhales too much carbon dioxide too quickly. Here's the counterintuitive part. Your brain does not trigger a breath because it needs more oxygen. It triggers a breath because it detects rising levels of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not just a waste gas, it is a chemical signal. A specific level of carbon dioxide in your blood is required to trigger what is called the Bohr effect. The mechanism by which oxygen actually gets released from your red blood cells and transferred into your tissues. If you breathe too fast and exhale too much carbon dioxide, the Bohr effect weakens. Your blood carries oxygen just fine, but your cells cannot access it properly. You are, in a very real physiological sense, oxygen-starved while breathing heavily. Buteyko spent his career documenting this and developing breathing retraining methods to correct it. The same pattern was later studied by Dr. Mark Burhen, who found strong correlations between mouth breathing, disrupted sleep, and a cascade of downstream health effects including elevated cortisol, poor memory consolidation, and weakened immune response. Burhen's work points to something important. This is not a niche condition. This is a widespread default that most people never question because it feels normal. It feels normal because everyone around you is doing it the same way. But normal is not the same as correct. There is a simple test. Close your mouth right now. Breathe only through your nose. Notice how it feels. For many people, within 30 seconds, a quiet panic begins to set in. The sensation that there is not quite enough air, the urge to open the mouth and gasp. That feeling is not a sign that the nose is inadequate. It is a sign of how accustomed your nervous system has become to the wrong pattern. The nose can handle everything your lungs need. It was built for exactly that. The discomfort you feel is withdrawal, your body adjusting back toward what it was designed for. Slow nasal breathing, specifically at around 5 to 6 breath cycles per minute, has been studied extensively for its effects on the nervous system. At that rate, your breathing entrains with your heart rate variability, a phenomenon called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and the combined effect is a measurable shift toward the parasympathetic state. Calm, focused, regulated, your blood pressure drops, your cortisol drops, your cognitive clarity sharpens, all from adjusting how air enters your body. Ancient traditions knew this. Pranayama in yoga, Tummo breathing in Tibetan practice, the extended exhales of Zen meditation. Across completely different cultures and completely different centuries, human beings kept arriving at the same discovery. Controlled nasal breathing changes the state of the mind. They did not have the neuroscience to explain why. Now you do. Your ancestors did not think about how to breathe. They did not need to. The hard foods they ate carved wide jaws and open airways. The pace of their lives did not sustain the low-grade sympathetic arousal that modern humans live in chronically. Their bodies breathe the way bodies are meant to breathe, without instruction, without effort, without thinking. You are the first version of your species that has to consciously reclaim something this fundamental. Tonight, when you go to sleep, notice how you breathe. Tomorrow, when you sit at your desk, notice how you breathe. In a moment of stress, notice how you breathe. That simple noticing, that quiet redirection back to the nose, back to the slow, back to the deliberate, is not a wellness trend. It is a return to something your body has been trying to do since before you were born. You took a breath at the beginning of this. Right now, without thinking about it, you just took another one. The question is, did you do it the way you were built to?